Hey everyone, I'd like to go over a few steps you can take and money you can spend to make your footage and your editing process a lot easier when you're run and gun vlogging like me. So I started vlogging my landscape photography about a month ago, and since then I've gone through 2 cameras and I've done a whole lot of research, buying little bits and pieces, and this is all to make my editing process and my footage a lot easier to watch and a lot easier to edit and pull together. So I started with the GoPro Hero 6 Black that just came out. At the time, the advertising actually got me and I just went and bought one. I thought it was the right choice, but with low light performance being pretty poor, ending up with a lot of chroma noise in that video, the stabilization being good in a way but quite robotic, I found it really weird to watch the footage back when it was done. And the fact that you can't zoom on the thing, I don't know why I didn't even think of this beforehand. And so I quickly went from the GoPro Hero 6, selling that, and then getting the Panasonic Lumix LX10, which is a baby brother to the Sony RX100 V, which I've got here. But the problem with that one was that while it was much cheaper than the RX100, the stabilization was pretty average and the focus was even worse. It would often miss my face while I was in New Zealand, ending up with focus way back on the background, and it's just, you can't watch that kind of footage. So, and the other thing was that with my shaky hands in the cold, it was quite shaky, and I had to stabilize almost all of the footage where I'm hand holding it. And that led me to just finally say, okay, I must do this. I just have to get the RX100 V, spend a bit more money, and it hasn't missed a beat ever since. So what I was thinking about was the fact that in my past experience with cinematography, doing music videos, you have more time to set up those shots, and it's very, very different to running and gunning with vlogging, especially when you've got a full camera kit with a tripod, plus your video gear for your vlogging. So what I thought was, it might be easiest to explain it like this. Up here is quality. Over here is size, and over here, well, weight too, and over here is money. And if you want the highest quality video, you've got to have a lot of gear and you've got to spend a lot of money. Unfortunately, that's just the way cinematography at its prime is. You need to spend the money and get the biggest sets of gear like rigs and big cameras to get the most quality. Now for vlogging, this is very, very different. We don't have quite the expectations that cinema does or music videos. So we can sort of compromise, but there comes a point where dealing with the compromises at whatever you choose might become too much and actually result in footage you just can't use in your videos. So this is where you've really got to weigh up what you need versus how much you can afford. I feel very lucky to have the kind of financial position that I do, where I can afford to spend that little bit extra on the smaller gear to get those features that really help me in the editing process. So one of the biggest things you can look out for in a camera is the autofocus and the stabilization. With the RX100 V, this is not a review, by the way, it's just my recent experience with the camera versus the previous two that I went through. The phase detect autofocus through video goes a long way to always pinpointing, and see, it's finding my face right now. I'm looking at the screen, and if I move away, it should focus straight to the end and then find my face and come back. That's what you want. With the Sony and with other cameras that have phase detect autofocus throughout video, they will be able to see the focus much better than contrast, which is what the Lumix LX10 had. It would have to look at the actual image being projected onto the sensor to find what's in focus, and that just is a problem for video. The other thing is stabilization. Sony has a good reputation with in-body stabilization, especially with the Sony A7 series, and this RX100 gets a good rap. So with that, especially finding out that the active intelligent, the highest level of stabilization does not only optical, but then it also does crop stabilization. So it crops into the full sensor image and moves the frame around to help stabilize what's in the frame. This makes your life easier because you don't have to go into post so much often and click on that stabilization setting and wait for it to go and process and find out where the stabilized movement is. Not only that, it'll also make the viewing experience much more easy on the eyes. You don't have to watch this shaky camera going around all the time. So if you can find a camera like the RX100 that has good stabilization and good autofocus, then the camera is pretty much set. I'm shooting this at 1080p, and I shoot all my footage at 1080p at 50 frames a second, which is the PAL frame rate. If you're in America or another NTSC country, you can shoot at 60 frames a second or 30 frames a second or 24, whichever you feel is the right choice for you. For me, I want to get that smooth movement to make it feel like you're right there with me. If you can get all those things in your camera, then that goes a long way to make your footage really easy to edit and really easy to watch. Second thing, B-roll. Shoot as much of it as you can. When you're talking about something, capture a shot of what you're looking at. Get a wide shot, get a zoomed in shot, get a pan across it even if you feel like it. If it's something really beautiful and stunning on the eyes, just get a couple of different variations, and that'll really help you in your editing process to help tell the story of this this process or this vlog that you're doing. Even vlogging is about storytelling, and if you can gather little pieces, cut-ins, details or wide shots, the land that you are in, set the camera down and go do your setup or your sort of setup process for whatever you're doing. It might not be photography, it might be something else. If you can gather all these different clips, you can use them to show this and that, and your walking and the environment that you're in, the scene that you're watching with your eyes, what you're explaining. Like me, I explain a lot about what I'm photographing, and getting those extra shots of me actually doing the photography, setting up my tripod, getting the gear all set up, and then also showing what I'm looking at and the environment that I'm in really helps me to describe exactly how I'm doing all this stuff. Another little tip for B-roll and your own footage of you talking to the camera is just watch your exposure. I often have my footage at a 0.7 stop underexposure. That helps, especially with skin tones. Often a camera will think your skin tone should be darker or brighter than it should be, or the scene that you're in, and you'll get clipped highlights. So I sort of just leave it about 0.7 stops underexposed, and it just helps to bring that bring the color in a bit, and also make sure things aren't overexposed, which is a fault of digital sensors. They just do that. So just watch your exposure, lock it if you can, especially if you're on if you're getting some B-roll of a scene. Make sure the exposure doesn't sort of fluctuate throughout the shot, and that'll just help with the consistency. Another thing is recording your voice and the sound around you. I'm actually using the RODE SmartLav here, and it's for its size and its cost, it's actually a really good mic, and it has a little foam baffle on it that helps to block wind. It does, with this one, it does actually let a little bit of wind through, but it's actually pretty good at blocking it, especially for the purposes of vlogging, where you don't need perfect audio all the time. So one of the most important lessons I actually learned in the last week was audio gain control. Turn that off. With whatever, if you're using your smartphone to actually record the audio, as I am right now, find an app like I've got Tape Machine, which is an older Android app, but you can use that just fine nowadays. You turn auto gain off so that it's recording exactly what the levels are at all times. It doesn't bring anything up. This is especially important with oceans. I kept having major issues with my audio because I didn't even think about audio gain control and what it would do. While I thought the oceans were actually quite loud, my voice did get up above the oceans quite a bit. So when I found out that I could turn that off, the ocean noise behind me actually dropped quite a bit lower. So we're at broken head here, and I think the tide's coming in actually. We're at Noosa National Park. Well, we're down on the beach on the east end. So that went a long way to making it easier to edit my voice and compress it and do the EQing on it to make it clear above the ocean, even though it's constantly throughout the sound. Now, when you're out in a quiet environment like a mountain, you're doing some hiking or walking down a quiet street, it's not so important that you turn off auto gain control because those noises won't sort of drown out your actual voice. So the main thing is to get your volumes right up to about -1 dB, especially for YouTube. We're not working with sort of broadcast or anything like that. So with your mastering on your microphone vocal, if you're speaking to the camera a lot, what I do is I use a compressor of about 3:1 ratio with a soft knee, and then I check the peaking of the audio wave and make sure it's up, getting right up to about -1 at the peaks. And with that compressor and a bit of EQing to make sure it's nice and clear and not boomy, that sort of really goes a long way to making it very easy to listen to you speaking. And last if not least, even vlogging is about storytelling. You want to lead the person through your day or through your process when you're out doing, say, landscape photography or some other kind of photography or creative endeavor. If you can weave in your sort of teaching, if you're doing that as well, if you can weave that in and also tell the story of you getting up early and going out into nature and hiking up the mountain, getting to the sunrise and enjoying it and just absorbing that process. One of my first landscape photography videos was the sunrise at Main Range National Park. And while I think it was a good start, I didn't really need much of that first probably minute or so where I was explaining what we were doing. And I quickly learnt to do a quick intro, 15 seconds, and then dive right into the music and the title sequence and a bit of a shot from something that looks cool from the actual footage throughout the B-roll, and then straight back into it again. Getting your viewers engaged quickly and confidently will make them want to keep watching throughout the entire video. So I hope this helped. This is by no means exhaustive. There's so many more aspects to vlogging and documentary production than what I've explained here. These are really just what I've learned in the last month. Getting into it and then realizing, no, I really am doing this for real and I need to step up my own game and just spend that extra bit on the gear that really helps you get your footage stable, focus properly, and your microphone getting the vocal mastered properly and recorded properly as well. I wanted to provide a few tips for people getting into vlogging, wondering if they've got the right gear or they're using the right techniques. Because I quickly went through a couple of cameras and did a whole bunch of research because I wasn't getting the results that I needed. So if this helps, then that's great. Drop me a comment if you want, like, subscribe. I'd love to hear what you're talking about. So until next time, catch up.